Welcome back to the PA Startup Podcast. My name is Chris, and if you're new here, welcome. We talk about things that pre-PA students, current PA students, and new grads need to know. We don't so much talk about the medical things, because that's what school's for, and honestly, you probably don't want to take advice from us. We're talking about salary. That's what a lot of people ask us about. How much will I make as a PA? And that's a great question. But before we get to that, if you haven't yet, please subscribe below. Also, leave a comment below if you have questions, concerns, thoughts, ideas, criticisms. Before we do that, I worked forever on this intro, so let's do the intro first. All right, it's the same intro we've always had, but it did take a minute because I'm not a graphic designer. Yeah.
Any last words?
Yeah, but first a quick word from our sponsor.
Raid Shadow Legends. Raid is one of the most ambitious.
If you guys have seen any of our old episodes, we used to have buckets that we sat on.
Yeah, it's true.
And then we joked about getting sponsored by Tidy Cats, which was the bucket. We actually have a sponsor, though, now. VesselHarvest.com.
VesselHarvest.com is our sponsor.
And we know them, and we've built a really great relationship with them because we are them.
That's us. We sponsored ourselves, guys. How great is that?
We have a jacket. It's real.
We've got a sign on the wall.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's official. It's so official.
It is. They spent a lot of time and energy and, money.
We had lots of meetings to talk about, aligning our goals. So
it was easy at the end of the day. A lot of like-minded people in the room.
We did create VesselHarvest.com, and that is a resource for anyone, PAs, NPs, physicians, first assists, anybody out there that wants to learn endoscopic vessel harvesting, wants to get better at endoscopic vessel harvesting, or wants to get into endoscopic radial artery harvesting.
If you guys are familiar with us, you know that Chris and I both work in cardiothoracic surgery. So this is something that we do every day. And we found so much fulfillment in kind of doing our PA startup and just teaching and educating that we kind of just extended that into what we do every day and created a course specifically about what we do every day, which is endoscopic vessel harvesting.
A lot of endoscopic vessel harvesting comes from muscle memory, but there's a very large foundation that people never really get until they've been doing it for several months or years. And so we set out to fill that void, to fill that foundational knowledge first. So when you get to the OR, all you have to do is just focus on learning the scope.
Our PA startup, viewers and listeners, again, we really appreciate you guys and all the support you've given us. Gonna be a little more serious on the VesselHarvest.com
Not
courses.
as much joking around about his OnlyFans site or anything like that.
So if you're looking for that, it might be lacking a little bit. But there's a lot of great information in there. And again, thank you so much for checking out this video.
Okay, so compensation is a big question. And I will preface it by saying it's not everything about a job. You can get paid the most possible for a job and still hate it if you don't love what the topic is. So first and foremost, don't chase money, okay? That's my disclaimer. Now, having said that, I do understand that doing your dream job for pennies also isn't sustainable with student loans and living expenses. And as the economy is going, things are just more expensive. So I understand, and I'm not criticizing the question. I'm making a video about salary. But for those of you who say salary isn't everything, I agree, but it is a major component, okay? So it varies based on a number of different factors, right? So it depends on what you're doing, where you're doing it, and how long you've been doing it. The coasts tend to have a higher cost of living, so those salaries are higher. And specialties have usually a little bit more knowledge base that's needed, whether it's a surgical skill or maybe it's a surgical practice that has call coverage. And so that compensation might be more than if you're in an office setting. So there's a lot of different variables that play into it. So obviously years of service matter. So when you come fresh out of school, yes, you've graduated school, but you don't have that real world experience yet. As you gain that experience over time, especially if you stay in your field, that salary will rise. Hopefully it'll outpace cost of living. This year it did not. Now, if you have 10 years of experience, but you switch to a brand new job, you might not get the equal level of pay as someone who's been 10 years in that specialty. So let's say you work in surgery and you switch over to the ER, you might not get what a 10-year PA in ER the whole time is getting paid, but after a year or two, my hope is that you do catch up. So that is a good negotiating skill to use, is to say, hey, I don't know anything right now, but I will in a year or two, and so I want to revisit salary. And so that way you're not stuck with the cost of living raises as you go. As far as where you practice, there's physical location, which is the coast and things like that. But then, it's also your specialty area. Are you in a hospital? Are you in an academic center? Are you in a private practice office? Are you in a government, subsidized area? Are you in, there's just a lot of different types of practices. So that factors into it. And then also with that, do you have regular hours? Do you have variable hours? Are you taking call? Are you expected to stay in the hospital overnight when you're on call? Again, very widely variable, so I'm just doing averages across the board. So cost of living is a big factor, and it's really hard to look at that. But fortunately, this year for the AAPA report, they did include a cost of living calculator. This is not a sponsored post or anything like that, so if you're not an AAPA member, it is a great organization. This salary report by itself, I think, is worth the cost of joining because it can be a starting point for salary negotiations with a job. All right, so we are talking about salary plus bonus, okay? In the last video that we did, I'll link it here if you're interested, but the last video that we did, we talked about just base salary. So when you talk about bonuses, it gets a little variable because that's like incentive pay, doing extra work. Maybe you're an administrator part-time and you're doing some extra work. The best news of all is that the average national salary has gone up. So during COVID, it kind of stagnated, and then now it's gone up. So in our previous video, I believe it was $110,000 was our average national salary. Now it's $115,000, which is great. Also in our last video, people did find it helpful that we used a couple different areas of the country and not just using average national salaries. So let's talk about California again, because that is a state that has a lot of PAs in it. Let's talk about New York, because that will represent the East Coast. And last time I talked about Minnesota. I love Minnesota, don't get me wrong, but let's try a different one. Let's say maybe Louisiana, because I think the food in New Orleans looks amazing. And since watching Princess and the Frog, I've desperately wanted to try a beignet. I can't spell it. Beignet. I would love to eat it. So if you've ever tried one, let me know. Was it good? It looks delicious. All right, so I'm going to break these down into new grad salaries and experienced. We're going to talk 0 to 1, which is going to represent the new grad, and 5 to 9, which is going to represent what I would call experienced. Keep watching to the end because I'm going to do two things. One, I'm going to compare an equal job with equal years of service in two different places, but I'm going to factor in the cost of living differences, and I promise you, you will be surprised at the results. And I will also let you know what the #1 state for pay is and the #1 state for the best cost of living is in the United States. So hang with me, put up with me for just a little bit longer, I promise you, or just skip to the end. It's up to you. So if we look at all specialties across the board, the average salary plus bonus for a new grad is $100,000. For the new grad, plus a $3,300 bonus. So that ends up being $103,000. And I will also put the ranges of the salaries that were reported so you can see that it is variable, obviously depending on where you go. Now, if you're a 5 to 9 year experienced PA, if we looked at all the specialties across the board, that is $113,000. For average salary plus a $5,000 bonus. So that's pretty good. If you have now, from year 0 to year 5, we went up $13,000. That's a pretty big raise. So that is a good thing. I like to see that. I like that the bonus actually went up a little bit, so you have something to work for. So it's not you just get in at this level and then you just chug along at the same rate, over time. So that's a good thing. So let's talk about what is it in California. If we look at all specialties, 0 to 1 years of experience is $122,000 with a $5,000 bonus. So significantly higher, but don't forget, cost of living is higher there. If we look at 5 to 9 years, all specialties, it's $137,000 with a $6,400 bonus. It kind of mirrors the nationwide gap between 0 to 1 year's experience and then going up to 5 to 9 years. If we go over to New York, we've got $110,000 plus $5,000 bonus for the new grad, and we have $120,000 with a $6,000 bonus for the experienced PA, all specialties in New York State. And if we go to Louisiana, those beignets, they do look good. So this is interesting. This is a little bit lower. So new grad is $94,000 with a $1,700 bonus on average. 5 to 9 years in Louisiana is $105,000 with a $6,500 bonus. You're looking at 95 compared to 110. So it still mirrors that same kind of gap between new grad and experienced is kind of a big chunk of money, which is good. Let's talk about what kind of medicine people are in and what the salary differences are for those people. So if we talk about primary care, we're talking about family medicine, we're talking about internal medicine and pediatrics. Subspecialties within medicine, which would be like cardiology, things like that, or you have surgical subspecialties. You have general surgery, and then you have, orthopedics, cardiothoracic, stuff like that. If we look at primary care across the country, for 0 to 1 years of experience, the starting salary is usually $100,000 with a $5,000 bonus. If we look at experienced PAs, that turns into $108,000 with a $5,000 bonus for the experienced PAs for annual salary. So let's look at cardiology. That's a very common specialty that people enter right out of school. 0 to 1 years of experience, the average pay for a new grad is $95,500 with a $2,500 bonus. And then if you're in cardiology for 5 to 9 years, you're experienced now, average salary is $114,500 with a $6,000 bonus. So $121,000 at the end of the day. That's pretty good. All right, orthopedics is another very common one. That was one of my top 2 choices when I graduated. I wanted to do cardiothoracic surgery or orthopedics, and I got neither of those jobs. So there it was. Now I'm in cardiothoracic surgery, so we're good. It was a little disappointing to not get my dream job right out of school. We have a video on that right here. If you graduate, I would encourage you to think of one of 2 things. You got to either pick where you want to live or what you want to do. If I wanted to work in cardiothoracic surgery, I needed to move anywhere in the country that would hire me, versus if I said I want to stay where I'm at, I'll take whatever comes, and then eventually I can work my way towards my dream job. That typically is what happens. There are people, though, that graduate that can get their dream job in the place they want to live. So don't be afraid to apply, but just a suggestion would be to decide which of those 2 is your priority, where you live or what you do, and then go from there. All right, so orthopedics. So a new grad in orthopedics is going to make $100,450 with a $1,000 bonus was the average. And if you're an experienced provider within orthopedic surgery, that goes up to $116,000 with a $6,400 bonus. So that is it's a bigger, that does not mirror, that is bigger than the rest of the gaps that we've seen. And that makes sense with the surgical skill. You may or may not be in the hospital in every job, because if you're in primary care, you might just be in the clinic. But you're doing consults, you're doing AAPs, you're doing follow-ups, you're maybe making rounds on people in the hospital, but you might not necessarily be scrubbing into surgery. So once you get into the surgical fields, well, now we have to worry about sterile technique and suturing ability, and can we close a wound well, and can we assist well in the OR? Can we handle the long cases that sometimes happen? So usually the surgical jobs the salaries are a little bit more widely variable because of call and those surgical skills and things like that. So orthopedics is obviously demonstrating that. Now, if we look at ER, which is another very common specialty for people to want to get into, as a new grad, average nationwide salary, $102,000 with a $1,000 bonus for new grads, and for experienced PAs, $117,000 with a $6,000 bonus. That's pretty good. And I will say that ER is a unique field, because you do have to know a wide variety of things. You have to, know sick versus not sick. That was in our interview with the emergency medicine providers. She said the hardest thing to learn was, are they sick or are they not sick, just by looking at them. And it can be deceiving sometimes, and that takes a while to develop. But it's such a wide variety. You never know what's going to come through the door. But on the flip side, it's usually shift work. So you might come in at 1 in the afternoon and leave at 1 in the morning. Or you might come in at 8 in the morning and leave at 8 at night. And you hand off. It doesn't matter what's happening. There's a million people waiting. When your shift is done, generally, you get to go. If you're in a city. If you're in a rural setting, that's not always the case. But at my job in cardiothoracic surgery, if there's 6 consults that need to be seen after 6 p.m. when we finish surgery, I got to go see all 6 of them, and I can't leave till they're done. So the shift work thing is pretty nice for work-life balance, and the ER pay for experienced providers is pretty good too. Last but certainly not least, let's talk about that cost of living, okay? Because we talked about, for the average salaries across the country, you had California and you had Louisiana, and it looked significantly different. Once we factor in cost of living, it's interesting to see what happens. California is the number 2 state in the country as far as pay. So that's the second highest pay in the country. but it's number 43 on the list of cost of living. New York ranks number 14 in terms of salary, but number 36 as cost of living. So the salaries aren't quite as high, and the cost of living isn't quite as bad. Louisiana comes in at number 48 as far as salary is concerned, but is number 30 on the list of cost of living. So if I look at an experienced PA in both California and Louisiana, and I adjust for cost of living, I didn't adjust it, you're welcome. Math isn't my strong suit. The AAPA Salary Profile adjusted it for me. If I let them adjust it for cost of living, what is an equal salary? An equal job, so average pay for all specialties in California was $108,763, and in Louisiana that same position was worth $116,000. So, because the cost of living isn't as bad in Louisiana, that money goes further versus California, where your pay might look bigger, but you're spending more of it on your living expenses. So, hope that makes sense. Fortunately, they did the math, not me. Check out the salary report if you want to learn more. And for those of you that are interested, the state that pays the highest salary in the United States is Alaska. And the state that is the best of cost of living in the United States, according to the AAPA Salary Profile, is Oklahoma. So, yeah. So that's that. Hopefully this was helpful for you guys. Please leave me a comment below. Let us know what your questions are, concerns are. If you haven't joined the AAPA, that salary profile is really helpful as a new grad, just for a frame of reference. And know that your employer will also have a salary model that they're following from some organization. So definitely compare the two. And I promise you theirs are lower. So these are self-reported salaries from actual practicing PAs. The other companies are taking kind of this aggregate data from all over. So sometimes where I live, our salaries do not match the AAPA salary profile. So I do use them when I negotiate for my team as a reference and say this is what the PA group is putting out. And we kind of end up in the middle. So we come up from their salary profile and we come down from ours just a little bit. And it's not significant, but it's there, it's present. So hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next episode of the PA Startup.